In today's episode, we are talking to Dr. Juana Bordas, leadership and diversity expert and author of the newly released book, The Power of Latino Leadership, about living in a multicultural society and the impact and evolution of that in the workplace. Welcome to Empowering Workplaces, a show for everyone who wants to make work better and more fulfilling. We are your hosts, culture designer Maddie Grant and organizational psychologist Sonia Lucina. Join us in today's awesome conversation. Dr. Bordas, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. We're very excited about this conversation as we are both, Sonia and I, immigrants and very multicultural. And I know we'll dig into that a little bit. But yes, so we're very excited to talk to you. But before we do that, of course, if you could give our listeners a little bit of your background and who you are.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. This is such a pleasure. I was born in Nicaragua, and my background is that I am Spanish, Indian, and my father was actually French Nicaraguan, so I have French blood. And then I also have some Mexican in there.
Love it.
But I immigrated when I was 3 years old. So I was the youngest daughter in the family. And because of that, because I was the youngest, and I'm so honored about this, I come from a family of 8, and my family, poured all everything into me. I always look at my immigrant parents and realized how much they gave up in order to give me the life that I have. So I'm very grateful for that. But after I went to college, I went in the Peace Corps and I went to Chile so that I could reconnect with my culture, because I actually started college in the 1960s. And at that time, there was no such thing as this multicultural wave that we had. And to be successful, you really had to adapt to the Anglo society and Anglo norms, which is great. I'm glad I know that. But I wanted to integrate who I was. So what I do today, by the way, is after I came back, I started doing leadership programs. I started doing a women's center, which is now 40 years old. It's the oldest women's center in Colorado and the largest Hispanic serving organization. And then I went to teach at the Center for Creative Leadership so I could learn mainstream leadership, and started my company in 1990. Hold on. Started my company in 1990. My company is called Mestiza Leadership International, and Mestiza means mixed or multicultural. And we're really an early pioneer. People weren't talking in the 1990s about what was coming. But I believe if you're a leader, you're looking at the future. You're looking at 10, 20 years from now. And I knew then, and demography, they say, is destiny, that we would be heading to where we are today. We're at the crossroads of a new society, which is multicultural, global, and actually young, because we're going through a generational transition as well. So that's a little bit about me, but let's chat about
it. Yes, so much to talk about. So Sonia, you want to kick us off with a little bit of data stuff?
I do. So first of all, I've known about your background, but even hearing you talk about it, I was just in awe. And I love the, futuristic thinking that you talked about. And that's what I'm even in awe. I was getting to know each other for a few minutes before recording the podcast. I was just so inspired by the way you look into the future. So I can't wait to dig into them more. And with that, the data point for today is that in 7 short years, millennials and Zs will make up half of the electorate, and they doubled their voting participation in 2018. They're shaping a new electorate and revitalizing America. So to me, this is so incredibly powerful, because when we think about the changes that are going on around us, when we think about the multinational aspect, not only of the United States, but I think globally, what these younger generations have to bring to the table, I think is a lot of hope for a different kind of future, a lot of hope for change. And so you shared this data point with us. I said a couple of things, what it means to me, but I'd love to hear why that's something that really resonates with you, and why that statistic is something that you really held on to, and how you think it's going to impact the future. So a lot to say.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, we might take a step backwards, because when I was in college, John F. Kennedy was running for president, and he came to my university, and he said at his inauguration, "Let the word go forth from this time and place that the torch has been passed to a new generation of leaders." And that was the boomers. That was my generation.
Mhm.
Well, I recently did a program for Johnson & Johnson, and it was for their Hispanic Affinity Group. There were 200 people in the room, and we were talking about this generational shift that's coming. And I asked people to stand by their generation. There was only one other boomer in the room. Boomers retire every day.
Oh, wow.
And yet millennials and Zs are the largest generation we've ever had. So what I see in leadership today is that we're at that transition point again, where we have to prepare a new generation to become the leaders of our society, right? We have to prepare, the young people in college, the young people in corporations. We have to be looking at how we're going to pass on leadership. And so that's a very important dynamic. But when you look at millennials and Zs, they are already identifying as multicultural, the majority of them.
Mhm.
And 60% of them are Latinos. And so what we're seeing with the new generation that's coming is that they are going to bring this multicultural, and it's such an exciting thing for me, the blending of different cultures. I mean, I think every culture has a gift to give humanity. And that by bringing all the cultural gifts together, I see it as the next step in our evolution as a people, as a humanity, that we're going to become much more open and welcoming. And many of the problems in the world are because of this division that we have. And yet we really are all one, and we can learn from each other. So here we have this incredible transition going. And at the same time, these young people face a lot of issues which are making them more politically engaged, such as climate change, such as gun violence. More kids die of gun violence than anything else. Such as the economic debt that they're facing when they finish college, such as the fact that they can't afford a house, and that many of them are not making a living wage. So I think it's call to action for leaders.
Yeah. Are you seeing that? So that fascinates me. And I remember I immigrated to the United States from Serbia in 1992. And I moved to Michigan. It was very middle class neighborhood. And I think I was the only foreign kid there. Everybody else, maybe with the exception, I can't say I knew everybody in school, but it certainly wasn't a very mixed school, and people of different backgrounds. It was predominantly white, middle class, born and raised in the United States, more than likely Michigan. And so I remember sitting there looking around and being like, oh, I'm one of the only ones that speaks 2 languages, and one of the only ones who wasn't here. Are you seeing that as the United States is becoming more diverse? Are you also seeing that more geographically spread out? Or do you still see more pockets? I know historically Florida is a little bit more diverse, California. Are we seeing that also go into the middle America? Because to me, I share that hopefulness with you, that the more perspectives people have, the more they feel like they come from a mix of backgrounds and can really relate to different kinds of upbringing and different experiences, the more empathetic they can be towards others.
Yeah, a lot of people say you can't be what you don't see.
Yeah.
In other words, if you don't have any interface with people that are different than you, it's really hard because you don't understand the benefits. Really, it's a beneficial thing. I always say, if God would have wanted us all to be the same, we would all be the same. But each one of us is totally unique, and one of the things that we do celebrate with young people is intersectionality, which means you can be everything. You can be Serbian, you can be, where do you live now?
I'm in Argentina.
And you can be some from the US, you can be a woman, or you could be bicultural, or you could be LGBTQ plus. It's an intersectionality that's happening now where you can embrace all these different aspects of yourself. But if you've never been exposed to it, it's hard. So that's a challenge for some people. And yet, if you look at, let me give you a little fact here. It's Taco Tuesday. You know what I mean? It's Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, everybody's heard of that.
And margaritas are America's favorite mixed drink, and salsa passed ketchup in the 90s as America's favorite condiment. And by the way, Salsa Express sells 2,000 kinds of salsa. That's real different than ketchup. I love ketchup, but it's a
not the same.
It's one size fits all. And that's not what diversity is about. That's not what humanity is about. And so, if you really want to do this, you can do this. You can read, you can see movies, you can travel, you can volunteer. I just had 2 people on my block volunteer. They retired and they're going to volunteer all summer at the YHCA camp. There's all kinds of opportunities today. You can sponsor a young person, you just have to have the corazón, or the heart, or the idea that I want to embrace, more aspects of humanity. And but I do think that we're seeing diversity in places like Arkansas and Alabama. Latinos, for example, are everywhere. We've really migrated. It's the Hispanic diaspora, and we're everywhere. Yeah. And so pretty much, unless you're living in a rural area now, I bet if you went back to Michigan, it would look different today.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait. I'm going in a couple of months, so I'm definitely going to look around.
They even have a congresswoman that is a Muslim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm from DC, and I emigrated. My father was from Thailand, and my mother is French, and I came over to the United States as a baby, but directly to Washington D.C. My dad was an economist at the International Monetary Fund. So I grew up surrounded by so many different cultures, and it was only when I was in probably middle school and we did a trip down to the Rio Grande, like a, cross country, like it was called Voyager. But that was the first time I went to places where there were no people from other places, and I'd never actually seen that because I was lucky enough to grow up in a city where there's every single kind of food you could imagine, on every corner. But I know that's not the experience, everywhere in the US, of course. So I think clearly the internet has done a huge amount to break down some of those barriers, because I know that all of my kids, all of their friends had friends from all over the world as elementary school children. Now they're in college, or almost. But, even very young, they were sort of email pen pals with kids across the world, that they were talking to people, in their classrooms. And that's just a really amazing thing to grow up with, if that can, and I hope was replicated, across the country, and classrooms all over the place,
Yeah. And one of the things you bring up about global is that they say, we have a global youth culture. It's not just the United States. They dress alike, they listen to the same music. Another cultural hit, Bad Bunny is the #1 artist in the world, and he's been for years the most downloaded singer on Spotify. And Bad Bunny says, yo no voy a hacer nada para que a ti me gusta. He says, I'm not going to do anything else for you to like me. I'm going to sing in Spanish. This is who I am. And there's a real emphasis with young people to be you, which really means find yourself, express yourself, integrate yourself, do the work that you need to become intersectional. And then, because these are all gifts that you're given. Think of the gifts that you were given, Maddie, to be able to grow up with all different cultures and all these different people. It just expands your brain, your consciousness, really does. Your emotional IQ, your intelligence, because you learn from other people that are different than you. If everybody's the same, you don't learn like that.
I love the music example too, because I think of I thought of K-pop, which is another one, right? There's so many kids who love K-pop, and that's such an Asian phenomenon.
Right.
But it makes me wonder about, like, if music is one of the pathways that allows younger people to, especially kids, to really connect across the world. Like, are there ways that older, more set in stone kind of minds, can still get there, Well,
I'm actually glad you asked that, because I'm on TikTok and my TikTok handle is Tia Juana, or Aunt Juana, or Titi in Puerto Rico. And the reason is because young people are asking us there's a new book called Going Horizontal, or they're asking us not to have hierarchy or dominance, which has been one of the problems with diversity. One group thinking they're better than the other, right? And so they want us to I have a millennial daughter, by the way. And when I was raised, if my parents said jump, my response was how high.
They don't do that so much anymore.
We come from hierarchical cultures. Well, that didn't work with her. She wanted to know why.
Yeah.
She wanted to know if there were alternatives. I mean, it was a conversation because young people are just more evolved than we are. Basically, they're just smarter. She's been on a computer since she was 3. Her mind is like, it's just very different when you interface with young people. And so I have them call me Tia Juana because everybody has a favorite aunt. Everybody had somebody who was a little older than them that they would go to for advice, but it wasn't somebody telling you what to do.
Yes.
I am older, so I have more experience. Experience is the teacher. I can share my experience with you. The other thing I do is that when I look at young people and when I work with them, it's always that idea that it's a collaboration. That we are here to teach each other, to learn from each other. And that's one of the reasons I feel that even though I'm an elder, I am alive, I'm young, because young people revitalize you. They make you, they're dreaming about their future. And so when you get with young people, you're automatically plugged into a new dimension, I guess, in a sense. And so I love working with young people and really learning from them. They are not only intersectional, which we've talked about, but they're multicultural, they're global, they accept people for who they are in many ways. And like me, they believe that if we're going to create a better society, we have to be active and we have to participate. And so I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to learn together.
Yeah. What are you seeing, I guess, shifting a little bit to the organization perspective? What have you seen as good ways that organization leverage that spirit, that open-mindedness, that drive to do things differently? Because I think when I joined the workforce, I remember it was like, millennials, they're the worst. They're going to do this. They're going to want it. And I do think that
there was a lot of bad mouthing.
Right? Like, oh, wow. And I feel like we still sometimes try to grab onto that, but I do feel like there's a different stigma with Gen Z, to the point that you're saying that maybe not always, but there is this more positive notion. There is this more like they will challenge the status quo, but a lot of times they'll do it really for the benefit of everyone, that maybe they're more bold to ask for something, that they're not asking for things that, the rest of us in different generations would also benefit from. So the reason I ask is I was recently talking to a friend of mine, and we're just at the company where I work, Question Pro, we're launching a mentorship program. And what my friend told me is that in the organization where she works, it's a mentorship program, but it's not the traditional, I'm the mentor, you're the mentee, I will teach you. That actually, especially the cross-generational ideas, perceptions, beliefs, there's a lot of benefit both ways, especially for senior leaders, because the younger generations can open up their minds for like, hey, have you thought about this approach? Or this is, what some other people are thinking about and looking at, and maybe it might not be.
They're definitely bringing life-work balance.
Oh, yeah.
Because our generation worked too much, and they know that. They know.
Oh, yeah.
My millennial daughter says, thank you very much. You and my father were workaholics.
Yeah. I want none of that. I want none of that. So
they're bringing that work-life balance, because they don't want to do that. But the mentorship is an interesting concept because in my book, I talk about allyship. And millennials are looking for allies, and allies are people that stand side by side with you. And mentoring, you have to understand, came out of the old dominant structure, and it was a way for white males to pick their proteges and to transmit power. To make sure that another white male or another person that agreed with them took the reins of power when they left, and by the way, took care of them as they left. And so young people are saying, no, we want allies. We want people who are going to work with us with a shared vision about the future and what we can do together. And yes, they respect me. They are very respectful of me, and they're very respectful of their elders. If you respect them, respect is huge. Respect is huge. And so that whole idea of really looking at allyship. The other thing about allies is it's not just a one-on-one, but allies are looking at what's going on in corporate systems or in organizational systems that prevent people from actualizing their potential, that prevent people from developing, that prevent people from giving it all their all and identifying with their work like maybe previous generations have been. And so allies actually stand up for and promote a more equitable organization.
I love that. And actually wrote that down as part of a branding as we launch this program. I'll definitely use that one. What else have you seen in organizations? Like I'm thinking, because a lot of our listeners are either leaders or maybe they're in HR, and oftentimes they come and listen to our show because they're looking for ideas for what else they could do inside their organization, whether it's something that's completely different or how they can improve programs inside. And I think that there's probably still a great opportunity that we can, of course, there are ERG groups and different things like that. But I do think that there's a great opportunity that we can still leverage these different viewpoints in really helping. Like today, I'm still hearing like organizations don't know what to do with flexible work and going back to the office and not going back to the office. And what you just said about your kids, like I want work-life balance. That is no longer a negotiable.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, I feel great that I don't have to work nights. Like, what do you mean? Like I can't have a life outside of work. So I was just wondering if there's some other ideas, either for what you've seen companies do or for some things that you wish you would see more in the future. Or hope to see more
I'd like to take a minute to talk about leadership, because leadership started going through a transition back in the 80s and 90s because our economy changed. We went from an industrial society to one where it's a service, it's technology, it's education, it's just very different. And what you want in organizations are knowledge workers. You want people who are problem solvers. You want people who are self-managed. You want people who have efficacy. And so everything started changing, and we went to leadership that is more collaborative, more participatory, more team-oriented. Studies at Stanford University shows that if you have a complex problem or an ambiguous problem, when there's not a right or wrong answer, like how do we market more, how do we sell more, how do we cut cost, how do we, ambiguous problems are solved at a higher level with teams, with participation, and particularly with diverse teams, and not just different people, but people from different functions, having somebody from marketing and budgeting and somebody who does the strategies and so forth. And so leadership is changing to be more in sync with women and with people of color and with the millennials. I mean, it's just being proven that if you have that kind of leadership, instead of the top down, instead of leadership by the few, one of the words I've coined is leadership by the many. So leadership by the many means that you want as many people as possible in your organization to take ownership, to be leaders. And so that's a very different way of having an organization. And what we're seeing in corporations in different places is kind of a matrix, so that the human resource department is run in a participatory style. The marketing department, the financial department, the IT, we still have hierarchy, but within the hierarchy, we now have the kind of matrix organization. And we also are seeing people at the top having to be more accessible and more transparent and more accountable. And so we are seeing these changes in organizations that are based also on the population changes that we have. And it's proven, they've even done studies that if you have women on your corporate boards, the organization thrives more, it's more profitable. And so I think when organizations look at the different populations, it takes longer to bring it together. But once you do, then people are empowered.
Yeah, what makes me a little sad is that I think even though there's so much data to support, all the things you're saying, we still have to be making this argument. And I'm just waiting for the day when we're not still, just pushing this sort of narrative and trying to come up with reasons why, or just explaining the reasons why this is a good thing,
Well, Maddie, this is where I come in with my experience.
Yeah.
Paradigm shifts take time. Women got the vote 100 years ago. They started the century with 18% of the workforce, and now they're like 47. The change takes time, and I think young people don't understand that. A lot of times I can understand it. Let me give you an example. When I entered the University of Florida in the 60s, it was segregated. There were no African Americans there. I marched my junior year to integrate my university, and I never met another Latino. It is now a Hispanic serving organization with more than 25 or 30% Latinos, and that's happened in my lifetime. And that's why I encourage young people to look at history and to understand change. Now, it's going very fast. Latinos, for example, were only declared a minority in 1980, and my prediction is by 2040. We will have made the change of the Latinization of America. So it's going faster now. And I think the same thing with young people. But we have to kind of put on our safety belts and realize that it's going to take some time and be positive about it, because that's where the energy comes from.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we look at something and in our opinion, it's so like what's right and wrong is so like black and white that it's hard to comprehend why the change is taking so long. And to your point, you're like, well, if you wait a little while, it is a paradigm shift. And it's not that something happens overnight, but it is frustrating to take a look at something and say, but if this critical mass of people agrees that we should have more diverse workplaces, that it should be in generally more inclusive, that leadership at the higher level of organizations, there needs to be better representation. Like we've been talking about this for decades.
Exactly.
When are we going to arrive? And it's better, to your point, it's better. But then sometimes it's like a slow drip. Like, come on, like open the faucet.
I'm with you on that. And I keep saying I want it to happen before I die.
It will.
Well, the other thing too is around Gen X, because I think a lot of Gen X, like Sonia and I are both Gen X, and we definitely represent a segment of the population that does believe in these things, but we're also in this weird middle zone where, some of us have kids like heading off to college, and at the same time we have aging parents that we have to start taking care of. So where it's like the sandwich generation. Yeah. So even though we believe in all of these things, we're just so freaking tired.
Well, Maddie, I've done a lot of work with women and run women leadership institutes, actually. And I used to say to the women, you can have it all, but not at the same time.
Yeah, right.
I mean, look at me. I mean, I have daughters, and they would kill me if they heard me say this, that are in their 50s. And I have had a good 30 years to really concentrate on my career after I raised my children. And so, it's coming. And there's a saying in Spanish, paso a paso. And it's one of my leadership principles, step by step.
Step by step. Yep, love it.
Step by step. And you also have to realize, one of the reasons I've dedicated my work to creating other leaders is because you're not alone. It's paso a paso, but it's also this leadership by the many. It's critical mass leadership. It's more people. How many can we get involved? How many can we get to participate? And, maybe today you can only do one thing. Maybe you just volunteer or something, or you're on a board, or you help out with your children's school so that they get a more robust education. But, it's step by step is how we're going to make this change.
Well, and that's actually why your concept of allyship is such an aha moment for me, because that is the way to kind of share the load, right? Exactly. So it's not just you by yourself trying to figure out the next step, but if you can get, a whole group of allies together, or several different groups of allies for whatever purpose, it just makes it all just exponentially easier to handle.
And I want to give a shout out to Sonia's idea. She mentioned ERGs, which are, employee resource groups. And I've done a lot of work with them. And I think that's very important for organizations to support groups that have formerly been marginalized, because if it's only me, and I have been in situations because I am, let's say, a trailblazer, because of I've been in situations where I'm the only one, the only Latina or the only woman. And that's difficult. But if you nurture your ERGs, if you give people development opportunities, if you give them a voice at the table, you're going to be able to benefit. But you can't do it alone. This is a collaborative, collective thing that we're doing. And so ERGs are really important to invest in. And I think the payback is, for example, I'll give you an example. I did some work with Microsoft, and Microsoft started a 5-year initiative to level out their higher level management. And the first 3 years they worked with African Americans, and they made it to parity. Wow. And that's pretty impressive to have that kind of a commitment from a large corporation. And now they're starting on Latino parity. And I think especially people at the top need to understand how beneficial this is. Latinos are the 6th largest GNP in the world. Our marketing power is larger than Canada, larger than Australia. I mean, you're looking at a lucrative market. They're not going to be able to survive. Organizations are not going to be able to survive if they do not connect to the younger generation and to the people of color that are going to be making up the majority of the population in the future. And so it's in everybody's best interest. And I say there's no downside to diversity.
Definitely agree with that one.
There's no downside, at least not for me.
I love that. And I think that's probably is one of our key takeaways for our listeners. I think to your point, we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, this idea that if you're interacting with others who have different backgrounds than you firsthand feel that benefit.
You grow, you learn, you expand, your brain gets larger, your IQ gets bigger, your emotional ability, your emotional IQ gets, and leadership, by the way, is a people business.
Oh, yeah. And so, and now that.
So, what an opportunity to learn and grow that we have now at this crossroads where we're becoming multicultural, becoming global, and we're becoming younger.
Yeah. And I love that. And then the coupling with the financials that you mentioned. So to me, whenever I've worked with data for a big part of my career, and it's always, how do you say something that resonates with your audience, right? And so a lot of cultural shifts, even inside organizations, we always say doing the right thing for the people and doing the right thing for the business. And almost always it's related. It's not like we'll do something really great for the people, but it's really going to tank our business. But I loved, the beginning and end of our conversation, because like we're saying, it's a personal benefit. And it's also very much a financial and organizational benefit. So if you're looking to make a change, if you're looking to get buy-in on initiatives, depending on who's on the other side of the table from you or next to you, and you're trying to convince them, you have both ends, almost both bookmarks, that emotional. And, if we don't cater to these kinds of groups, they are consumers. They are growing as a population. We just have to, even from a business point, it's not a question anymore. It's a business necessity. So,
and I also think it's an invitation. When you look at my life, I became bicultural and bilingual. I'm Dr. Bordas. I've been educated in dominant culture schools. And so I appreciate everything that I've learned from the American culture. And it's made my life just incredible and beneficial. But I had to go through some healing because I had grown up as a minority. I had grown up marginalized. I had never seen a person of my background in a leadership position ever when I was growing up. Not a teacher, not a bus driver, And so I had to go through some of that. So when we invite people to grow, there might be some things, some rough edges, right? Well, we don't make it that but it is a fiesta. It is a party that they're being invited to. But we all also have to do our personal work to be able to really embrace the other. And so it's an invitation for growth and development, I think.
I love that. And I think I just want to ask you, as we reach the end of our time, if you have any last advice or any words of wisdom or like something you want our listeners to think about. I think you've shared so incredibly much, but just wanted to give you an opportunity in case there was one more thing you wanted to put out there.
Well, I wanted to share one of my principles of leadership, which is called the leader as equal. And we talked about leveling the hierarchy. And one of the ways we do this is like when I get up and talk, I go like, well, right now I'm Dr. Bordas, but when I get off the stage, I'm you. I'm one of you. And the whole idea is that all of us have a gift and we might be a leader in some situation, but that our job as a leader is to see that leadership in every single person and to recognize that as a leader, we're equal as everyone else. You know, we have a position, we might have a title, we have things we have to do. You're running a podcast, now you're in charge. But when you get off this, you're going to go serve or work with or be a participant or a team member with someone else. And so the leader is equal if we can bring that out in each person. And I say, I don't care if the person keeps the place clean or does your IT or does the marketing or make sure you get paid. Every single person has value and every single person contributes. And if you can recognize their leadership, you'll build an organization where people are really committed, where they participate, and where they're saying, boy, they're investing in me, I'm going to invest in them.
Brilliant. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's such a pleasure to be with this diverse group of women. So let's keep the party going, like Pitbull says.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. What a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was incredible to have you on, and definitely looking forward to continuing the conversation. And thank you for just the brilliant work that you do and all the passion that you bring and all the change that you're igniting. I speak for all of us. We're so grateful for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's my job. Bueno, gracias.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Nos vemos. In addition to being the Empowering Workplaces host, I'm also the president of Question Pro Workforce, and I wanted to tell you a bit more about it because it so brilliantly aligns with our concept of empowerment. At Question Pro Workforce, we help organizations across the world better connect with their employees. We do this through continuous listening survey technology, as well as sharing our deep knowledge and expertise to help our clients know what questions to ask to most deeply connect with their workforce and take impactful action on data and insights they collect. Learn how Question Pro Workforce can be a great partner on your path to creating a really outstanding employee listening strategy and a remarkable organizational culture at questionpro.com/workforce.